Good afternoon, and thank you for staying to listen to me. I'll try and not take up too much of your time. I know how important conference tea breaks can be. I'd like to thank Kevin and Collections Trust for the opportunity to brief you today on the Exhibition Object Data Exchange Model, otherwise known as AODEM, which is a project that's being organized by the CDOC Documentation Standards Working Group. Today, I want to give you a brief reminder of what we're doing, a quick overview of what we've achieved recently, and an outline of our next steps. Our aim is very simple: to make it possible to export object exhibition data from a lender's collections management system at the touch of a button, and import that data into a borrower's system produced by a different software vendor just as easily. It should work like this. We start with an object recorded in a database. The lender opens their collections management system and finds the record. They press the AODEM export button and an AODEM file is created. The lender then emails the AODEM file to the borrower. The borrower receives the email and saves the file. The borrower then opens their collections management system and presses the AODEM import button, and the data is stored in the borrower's database. The project is being managed by a small working group meeting online more or less monthly, and it includes representatives from the Documentation Standards Working Group and several software vendors. Now, these are people who are discussing the standard. Not all the vendors listed on the screen are implementing it just yet. And other developers are also receiving notes from the meetings. For our data standard, we've settled upon CDOC's standard for lightweight information describing objects, or LIDO. But we're using the new version, 1.1, which has not yet been formally released. It's in a public beta. And AODEM's needs have actually informed some of the changes introduced in this new version. The decision to go with LIDO also chose our file format for us. LIDO uses the long-established and highly flexible extensible markup language to format its files. As I mentioned, some of our requirements contradicted the LIDO standard. Luckily, LIDO was in the process of being revised. The draft of version 1.1 was issued for comment in April last year, and I'm very grateful to Regina Stein, chair of the LIDO working group, who's been working closely with us. Now, our problems lay in three areas. First, as currently defined, measurements in LIDO are measurements of the actual object, length, weight, height, etc. But we want to record measurements that relate to the object's requirements. The LIDO working group has agreed to extend the definition of measurements in version 1.1 to include requirements as well as actual physical measurements. We also want to tie these requirements to generic events such as display, transport, etc. But events described in LIDO must be specific historical occurrences. However, the LIDO working groups advised us that our events can be considered as historical occurrences if we conceive of them as being the assessment that took place to determine what an object's display requirement should be. And finally, we needed a way of identifying a group of sets of measurements which are all about one thing, for example, an object's temperature requirements. And the LIDO working group has agreed to assign a new attribute to the unit of information that contains individual measurement fields in order to accommodate this. LIDO also relies on the use of external vocabularies to help identify what different parts of a document are describing. Here, we're entering the world of linked data identifiers, which take the form of URLs, which then resolve to further information about the concepts they describe in human or machine readable form. Now, we needed these in 4 areas and have been delighted by the cooperation from 3 organizations who very quickly added our proposed terms to their vocabularies. The Getty Vocabulary Program, who've added terminology regarding environmental requirements to the art and architecture thesaurus. the LIDO working group, who've added event and measurement types to LIDO terminology. And last but by no means least, Collections Trust, who have added some new collection management concepts to Spectrum as candidate terms for the next edition. And they've also set up a new system of persistent URLs, PURLs, for the candidate and existing units of information, which we can use in our LIDO XML to specify what we're describing. So we've now finalized a human-readable draft specification of what an AODEM record should look like in LIDO, a LIDO profile. We've created a sample record. We've created some accompanying tools and templates to show developers how to work with the raw XML file. And we've developed and demonstrated proof of concept importers and exporters for an AODEM record in Museum Plus and modes. And here I'd like to say a particular thank you to Jette Klein-Berning at ZCOM and Richard Light, formerly of the Modes User Association, who've been doing the bulk of the heavy lifting when it comes to XML processing. The major piece of work, though, is establishing AODEM as a formal profile of LIDO, and this is where it gets a little complicated. AODEM will be the first formal LIDO profile to be implemented within an integrated technical framework. And we're collaborating with the LIDO working group, along with the Conda project, to work out precisely what this framework will look like. It should take the form of a single XML document, which contains a description of AODEM in the form of changes to the LIDO XML schema, a set of schematron rules to provide richer validation and more useful failure messages, and human-readable documentation of the AODEM profile. This single document can then be used to generate an XSD schema file to validate AODEM LIDO records, an XSLT file embodying the schematron rules to help provide more informative validation reports, and human-readable documentation in HTML or other formats in the form of both an outline of an AODEM document structure, which will help developers construct documents for export, and a list of units of information and how to extract them from the AODEM document, helping developers query documents for import. And finally, we should also be able to generate from the same file a sample AODEM document with real-world examples. Now, we're still working out precisely how to format this single XML document, and this is very much a case of specifying by doing. Again, Richard Light has very kindly been doing the bulk of the work. Now, although the AODEM units of information are fairly settled, our work on the AODEM profile XML document has shown us that we need to review precisely how we define them in LIDO terms. We're working on that at the moment. Once that's done, we can release our specification as a public beta, but we'll probably want to delay the release until the supporting technical framework is in place, as it will be much easier for developers to work with AODEM if they can validate the files they're generating. And of course, development is the vital next stage. We want the system to be incorporated into as many collections management systems as possible. And we hope that system vendors will spend the next year doing just this. In fact, 8 vendors are already either developing or planning to develop an AODEM exporter, and 4 are working on an importer too. So what's the timetable? All being well, we hope to publish a public beta in time for the 2021 CDOC annual conference, which is actually taking place in May 2022. We will also run further workshops there, introducing the project and for vendors to discuss the practicalities of implementation. After that, we're dependent upon the release of LIDO version 1.1 as a stable release. We still don't know when this will be. But hopefully, once LIDO 1.1 is finally released, our public beta will be stable enough for an initial set of vendors to try and develop importers and exporters and incorporate them into their collections management systems. Once we've reviewed and incorporated their feedback, we'll be ready for a stable release of AODEM version 1. which I hope to be able to announce at either the 2022 ICOM Triennial Conference or at next year's Collections Trust Conference. Thank you very much.